Dune, No Time to Die, and Little Factory. This is Staying In.
This is going to be no use to anyone listening to this. But I feel like in a year's time, it may be useful to someone, so we should still do it. Are you with me?
Okay. Well, before I say I'm with you, I need context. Because you've given me none so far.
So
I'm hesitant to agree to something that you're putting forward without me knowing the context.
when this comes out, it will be the 1st of November, right? So we would have missed...
Hopefully.
So we would have missed Halloween, and more importantly, missed the period in the UK where the clocks go back, okay? And we get an extra hour in bed.
You are obsessed with this.
Well... My job is very clock focused, and so I am
Sam,
obsessed.
the clockmaker Turner.
A professional ornithologist. No, not ornithologist.
That's
What is it?
birds.
That's birds, isn't it?
It's something. Is it horology? Horologist.
No, horologist. There we go. Yeah, Sam term, professional horologist. Right. Anyway, so. Because my work is very clock focused, it's drilled into us like we need an extra hour of output here, or don't worry, this hour's covered by the clocks. I was just thinking, how can we help people who may not know how to fill that extra hour? Do you just sleep? Do you do something productive? Do you try and do some self-improvement, possibly? I mean, in front of me, I've got, thanks to Radio 4, 14 things to do with an extra hour. And I'm going to see if you guys can guess some of these things that are on there. So there's 14 things. Can you try and guess what someone on Radio 4 suggested they do with an extra hour?
Now, Sam, without giving any obvious hints, are a lot of these answers predicated on the stereotypical Radio 4 listener?
One of them does reference
Listen to the Archers Omnibus.
One of them does reference Shakespeare, and another one assumes that you own a bookshelf. So yes, probably.
Right. Straight out the gate, read the complete works of William Shakespeare
in an hour.
Over an hour a day. It's not like
no, Chris. Do you not?
No. This is to fill the hour. That
in an hour. Sorry. Read a play. Read a Shakespeare play.
Correct. Read Shakespeare's snappiest play. So you could read Comedy of Errors is the shortest. So you should just be able to finish it within the hour.
Reading all the parts in different voices.
Yeah. So you could. So just to correct you, Chris, this is what you're going to do, and the extra hour you get when we go to GMT.
Just 1 hour. Okay.
Just 1 hour.
Daniel.
I'm basing this on the clue that there wasn't a clue that it involved a bookshelf. And the only thing I can think of, and I can't imagine why someone would want to do this in an extra hour, would be to rearrange your bookshelf.
Correct. Make a rainbow.
Why would you want to spend your extra hour just rearranging your bookshelf?
It says here, make a rainbow, group them together in colour blocks, or simply separate your library into books you've read and those you still need to.
Now, you joke, but actually I was genuinely thinking about doing this a couple of days ago. Arranging my books into colours.
Hang on. The prospect of rearranging a bookshelf, I don't have a problem with that. Like, we rearranged bookshelves in the past by colour scheme because it looks nicer as an aesthetic. But when you've got an extra hour, why would you sit there and think, you know what I'm going to do? Rearrange that bookshelf. I've been meaning to do it for months.
Right, I would go with something fitness related, Sam. So using that extra hour to perhaps do something of a workout, say, for example. And then you say you can exercise this year.
Get active is number 6. If you're a regular runner, a 10K probably takes about 50 to 70 minutes. So there you go.
I don't think it's going to be on there, but just catch up on some sleep. Coming from someone with a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, that's all I think about. So,
to be fair, sleep is number 1.
Oh, that's all right then. See.
Bloody hell!
Bingo bango.
Damning indictment to the Radio 4 listenership.
Yeah, but the problem that you and I share, Dan, is that maybe with maybe with your eldest, it's not so much of an issue. It's also making them aware that they need to sleep for the extra hour.
Oh yeah. Oh no. I didn't think this through. Oh no.
Do you know what I would do?
Hey, Dougie can only placate them for so long.
Do you know what I would do with the extra hour? I would
Chris.
use that extra hour to try something new, like pick up a new hobby or a pastime, and then if I don't like it, I've not lost anything. It's an extra hour, but if I do enjoy it, I can kind of carry on with that hobby as something perhaps regular in the future.
Okay, well, maybe your extra hobby, your new hobby, could be number 7 on this list, which is exfoliate the face. An hour of exfoliation will help you shed your old skin cells, bring newer, healthier cells to the surface, say hello to a healthy glow. I don't know if that can be a hobby, but...
There is a sense of like an annual rebirth then, isn't there?
Yeah, where's Kris? Oh, he's exfoliating for an hour.
He's shedding.
Chris is busy. Chris,
Like a snake.
hang on. Chris is busy.
He's forming a chrysalis. A chrysalis!
Chris is regenerating in the bathroom. And just in case listeners were wondering, I do wash my face more than once a year.
Cool, so just keep thinking.
Just keep mulling.
There's some crackers on here.
Oh, well, another clue there, Dan.
Eat crackers.
Yeah.
Did you ever do that experiment where you have to try and eat like 2 kind of Jacob's crackers in 2 minutes?
I've done that one, and I've done the Kit Kat one.
No, with the Jacob's like the water biscuits like you have with cheese and crackers and stuff. I think it's 2 in 2 minutes, or maybe it's 3 in 3 minutes. It's basically impossible because it dries out your mouth kind of immediately.
I'll take that bet. Tell you what, Dan, remind me about this, and I'll send you video footage of me attempting this challenge.
Yes, I want it.
I mean, it will be like looking into the sandworm of Dune.
I think it's 3 crackers in a minute. Do you think you could do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
3 crackers in a minute.
Okay. I'll go into training now with my extra hour. Yes, Dan. So it's been a bumper treat for me at the moment. So I got to go to the cinema twice since our last recording. Yeah. Well, Sam came along as well. And we very recently, it was actually just a couple of days ago, we went to see Dune. And Dan, Sam pulled off the ultimate grift.
Hang on.
No, Dan, this was incredible. So you remember Ocean's...
I will be the judge of if it was grift worthy.
So admittedly, Sam did pay for the ticket, so already this is undermining the sense of this being a grift. But traditionally when you go to the cinema is that you pay for your tickets, you get them on a little stub of paper, and there's always somebody, acting there as a kind of a security there, just checking that you are who you say you are, and you've actually paid for tickets here. We were all behind Sam because Sam marched off to get to the screen, get to the seats. We went to see Dune in the IMAX cinema, and he basically just strode past the bloke. The bloke said, "Excuse me," and Sam had already gone up the escalator. And Sam returned and said, "Sam, come back!" And he's like, "No." He just shrugged. He just did this. He just shrugged his shoulders and said, "Well,
Kris,
sorry."
Kris,
and off he'd gone.
There wasn't a guy there. I thought because we were going to see an IMAX showing, the IMAX, they want to make you feel special for spending a bit of extra money. So it's like separated from the rest of the cinema. You got like screens 1 to 6, screens 7 to 10, and then an escalator which leads up to the IMAX. There wasn't a guy there, so I assumed there'd be someone at the top of the escalator being the IMAX bouncer. So people could go up the escalator, have the IMAX sort of, this is what it would be like, and then be sent back down. So I just strode up the escalator, only for me to be heralded back by...
He just strutted his way up the escalator. No, you didn't come back.
The ticket guys, what can I do? I'm on the escalator going up to see Dune. Bye! And the guy was like, be fine.
Yeah.
And I was like, brilliant. Off I go. So, yeah.
So hang on. How was that a grift?
Oh, because I found a loophole.
Because you had bought a ticket.
Yeah, no, but if I hadn't have bought a ticket...
Yeah, if Sam hadn't bought a ticket, he could have literally... but it's the if. He found it, It was just pure confidence and pure charisma.
I
I
found
think
the
we need to
future
determine
grift.
what a grift means.
Yeah, Chris.
Because going to the cinema without buying a ticket, it's not a grift, it's theft.
God,
let's make no bones about it.
Oh my gosh.
Well, it would be a grift if I sold the idea, but we've already given it away for free. So, sorry, IMAX in Cheshire Oaks.
But it was.
You're about to get a lot of people confidently striding up your
Just
escalator.
running up escalators.
But it was lovely to go to an IMAX. I haven't been to an IMAX cinema probably since Gravity,
Dunkirk.
I think. Dunkirk. Did you see Dunkirk in IMAX?
I definitely saw Dunkirk. Was definitely the last film I saw at IMAX.
Yeah, it probably was the same for me then. And it was the perfect film to see it on, I must admit.
Mm.
So yeah.
So you went to see Dune.
Yeah.
I've heard things about it. I'm not that familiar with Frank Herbert's novels. I never saw the original adaptation or any of the adaptations actually, because there's been more than one. I have actually recently bought the books. I thought I wanted to read it, and then because I think from what I hear, the only thing I've heard about the film Dune, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't think this is necessarily a spoiler, although it might be a little bit of a spoiler. So if you're concerned about spoilers, maybe stop listening for about 5 seconds, because the spoiler is the fact that it basically is just an introduction.
Well, it's very interesting. Like, one of the first things Sam said to me when he walked out was like, did the director, Denis Villeneuve, tell the producers that he was going to put on the title card Dune Part 1, which is on none of the posters, but what's beautiful is it's there for about half a second on the screen.
Yeah,
and you're just like,
great.
did you just see?
Yeah,
Part 1?
You could just imagine, because it's on none of the posters. Like, it's very well known that like this is a film that he has set out to be told in 2 parts, but it's not on. That's like, in terms of like marketing, it's been like stripped off all the posters. Yeah. It's just a well-known thing that like this is the first part of hopefully a 2-part movie.
So maybe that's where people are. When I say people, I'm talking about Twitter people, which is never the most reliable of people to listen to.
Nah, man.
So maybe that's where that kind of response is coming from.
But just like my confidence of walking up the escalator, it's the confidence of a director to put Part 1 on the opening first slate, so you can just see all the execs from Lionsgate going, "Did he just? No, he's not. What? Denny.
You can just imagine just before it goes for printing, you're like, just one last thing,
Just
one last change. Just, it's nothing important.
I can imagine with the screening to the producers, he would have literally just, what he would have done is he would have just, as he was showing the film to the producers and everything, I can imagine that when he sensed that the title card was about to appear, he'll like throw a glass or something onto the floor so everyone would turn away and immediately take their gaze off the screen. So it was always there. Yeah. But they just missed it.
Anyway, to answer your question, Dan, the film covers probably just over the first half of the book. So it's definitely more...
Wasn't the book originally like a trilogy?
No, it was always 2 parts.
Yeah, I mean, like, so I got into Dune, not through the books. I must confess I've not read the books. But at university... I was introduced to the fantastic sci-fi miniseries that won several Emmy Awards, which is phenomenal. I also watched Children of Dune.
Is that the one with James McAvoy?
No, James McAvoy was in Children of Dune. The first one, I can't remember who plays Paul, but it's got William Hurt as his father.
Yeah.
It's a great series. It really, really is. And for many people, Dune is just an unfilmable book, but there are so many fantasy epics out there that have been adapted that everyone's called unfilmable. Mm-hmm. Lord of the Rings being an obvious one in that regard. So this is basically set at some point in the future, and at the centre of the entire story is this desert planet Arrakis, which has this extremely valuable resource called spice, and it's basically the great MacGuffin or the great fuel for this entire empire, made up of all these different houses. Really, kind of thinking of almost like the Game of Thrones kinds of houses, but on a much, much grander cosmic scale, essentially. And for about 80 years or so, one house has ruled this planet, and then they're told by the Emperor to pass that on to somebody else. And it's this House Atreides, now coming to Arrakis. And they realise they've entered this spider's web of all these kind of political machinations, and it's a hostile environment that has this most incredible mythos attached to it as well. and Paul has been getting these dreams, recurring dreams about the planet that he's never visited, and this mysterious female that he sees there, who's part of the indigenous species of this planet. And it's about him coming to terms with what are these dreams and whether they're destiny, part of a destiny of some sort. And it's about the various different factions fighting for this incredible resource, and the kind of engaging with the myths and mythos of this people who have lived here for thousands of years. With the spice, it's part of their livelihood, it's their blood, and they've watched their planet get mined away and kind of maligned and pushed to the side. But also the iconic thing, the sandworms, and little things as well that Denis Villeneuve does really, really well in terms of that mythos, which are very difficult often to capture in film, are what make this interesting for me. The little things like you have to walk across the sand in a particular way. You can't walk in a rhythmic fashion because that attracts the worms. And how he manages to let these little tidbits of information about the mythos of the planet and the various different houses, how he lets that trickle through, is really exemplary, really. And I really, really enjoyed this. It was really interesting watching this in juxtaposition with the next film we'll probably talk about today. This is a much shorter film, and it didn't feel long or bloated. It's not a fast roller coaster ride of a film, and it's not trying to be a blockbuster, even though it's got a blockbuster budget. And it's tackling a subject matter, a source book, which you could imagine in a different director's hands would be a gigantic action fest. This is a very, very cerebral, mature adaptation of this work, really. And it just made me want to read the books and just immerse myself in its mythos, really.
Yeah, you see, Dan, I would not read the book before going into this. Because I did, and I think my experience was poorer for it.
But I'm not going to see Dune for some time. So
I still wouldn't.
And I'm only going to see it on a small screen, so I'm not going to get some of the spectacle that you will.
No, I mean, the IMAX was a treat. Like, no word of a lie. We went to go and see it 2 or 3 days ago, and this is the first time I'm hearing what Kris thought of the film, because I don't know how you felt, Kris, but my senses were so, especially seeing it at IMAX, I just felt like it was just such a nice attack, but an attack nonetheless on my senses for like 2 3/4 hours. When we came out of the cinema, we were all just kind of like, okay, see you later. Just like I couldn't, the thought of like interacting or speaking or talking was just like, I just needed a break.
Yeah.
From engaging my senses.
And it's bizarre because it's not like it's hitting you over the head with stuff, but you've just got these incredible vast spectacles of just this desert. Yeah. And it's just so beautifully shot. And with Hans Zimmer's music.
Yeah, this is what I was going on to say, because Denis Villeneuve apparently told Hans Zimmer that he didn't want a narrator for this film. So unlike something like Lord of the Rings, which kind of like gently eases you in with a bit of narration, setting the scene, the context for the whole thing, putting everything into helping like on board the audience into like what the ring is and why it's powerful and kind of what's happening. There is no narrator. There is no one who sits down right at the start and goes, right, this is Spice, this is Arrakis, these are the Harkonnens, this is Paul Atreides, and he can say things and make you do stuff. This is a Gom Jabbar, this is a Chris knife. Like, there's none of that at all throughout the movie. So he said to Denis Villeneuve, the director, said to Hans Zimmer, you're the narrator.
Yeah.
The music provides the narration and gives basically provides cues to let the audience know that this is happening because of this. And this is like a story that if I was sitting down and adapting it, the easy thing to do is just like, just whack a bit of narration there. Yeah, we'll explain that with a bit of narration, a bit of a title card, and then roll away. But you are never told at any point what things are, the sort of the significance of certain actions and certain houses. You're just left to sort of pick stuff up from within this world. And that's why I felt shortchanged having read the books, because I knew what the kind of the history of things is. I knew what a Chris knife was. I knew what a Gom Jabbar was. I knew, what the sort of the plot revelations were going to be. I knew, who was going to backstab who and for why and all this kind of stuff. And so I viewed the film from that point of view of basically of a way of how are they going to do this functionally? How are they functionally going to present this movie? Oh, that's how they've done it. Oh, that's clever. How are they going to do this scene? Oh, that's how they've done it. Rather than just like enjoying this story. And the story is incredible. I'm not a big fan of the book, but the story within the book is actually, really is incredible. So I feel like I really want to watch it a second time, because I feel like I just need to enjoy it for the actual story it is, rather than trying to assess it on how good an adaptation it is, which is one of the reasons why I think I was so blown away by Lord of the Rings when I saw that for the first time, because I'd never engaged with the property. So for me, it was like just seeing this thing for this incredible story for the first time. And I genuinely believe that Dune, for this generation, is going to be their Lord of the Rings. I think it's going to be, hopefully, fingers crossed, I think it's going to be that kind of epic, adaptation of something that's so well known that will have echoes on throughout its, this duology that's going to happen. It's going to be, I think it is going to have as much an impact as the Lord of the Rings films did.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It does feel like that. There's so much love and detail and care and attention gone into this. The director loves the source material. Hans Zimmer turned down working with Christopher Nolan on Tenet to do this film because he loves the books himself. He built musical instruments just to create this kind of futuristic score. So the instruments you're hearing in the score don't exist. They were built entirely for this, to reflect the various different factions, but also that mixture of the Atreides household coming in with that of the Fremen tribe, who this is their world, essentially. And there's a fantastic cast here from across. It's just an astonishing cast, but the whole film is just so understated. It's not trying to be big and bombastic and showy, even though it has got some incredibly epic set pieces.
But that's what I mean. Like, it's got this like wonderful, like, the reason why I'm telling you don't read the book, Dan, is not just because I think you'll enjoy the movie more. It's just I think you just won't enjoy the book. Like, my biggest problem with the book is whenever it introduces something, it's just like, it's not, Paul never walks through a door. He walks through the Krisalis door. Oh, and Paul never puts on a T-shirt. He puts on the Rondel T-shirt of protection, and it's just like everything has a myth, or everything has some sort of legend attached to it, which I think really just bogs down, just like weighs down the book. But over the years, since it was first released in like the 1960s, has given so many of the fans like lots and lots of stuff to sort of like really like lean into in depth. It's just like, why is this thing called this thing, and what is the reason behind this thing, and like really delving into the text to enjoy it. But because it kind of just pushes that all to one side, the film has much more of a lightness and much more of a is much more sort of like adept and flexible to kind of just move around. It never feels like it has to explain anything or get bogged down in that. It can just like move on and just trust the audience to know that either this will be explained in time, or you just need to have faith in the director that you don't really need to know about, what the Bene Gesserits are just yet.
I think I'd seen quite a lot of articles dedicated to basically here is a glossary of all the things that you kind of need, because perhaps that was part of the, when you're talking about kind of, there is a lack of, and I don't mean that as a negative, but there is a lack of hand holding, so to speak, in terms of this is this, as you say, no narration or anything like that. So perhaps that is coming from a viewpoint of these are all kind of obscure, kind of almost avant-garde kind of names and titles and references in there, that perhaps...
But it's the same in Game of Thrones, right? It was, before you started that series, you didn't know who the Greyjoys were, or the Starks. And, like, to Game of Thrones' credit, it did a lot of, like, very simple showing, not telling, who these houses were. Now, by the end of watching Game of Thrones, Dan, you could tell me like the Starks are a noble family, and this is their emblem, and they're defined by their, like, how steadfast they are, and they're stubborn. Oh, the Greyjoys are, they're based on the sea, and like there's the Targaryens, and they're, linked to the dragons, and they're very stubborn and stoic, and X, Y, and Z. And so Dune has that same approach in terms of like it doesn't feel there are a lot of things that, like, you need to understand who the Harkonnens are and the Atreides and who the Bene Gesserits are, but there's a lot of sort of just filmic and like screenwriting and just, as Kris was saying, just such great acting that you very easily understand, like, right, these are the bad guys, right, this group of people have an agenda which is separate to the main story going on, right, these are the good guys, in inverted commas. So there is a lot of depth there, and by the end of the film you've got a much better idea of, like, okay, this is what's motivating the Harkonnens, this is what's motivating the Bene Gesserits. But just like in Game of Thrones, there's just enough shorthand there for you to go, right, okay, I'm happy here, I'm happy here. What was that? Okay, yeah, I'm getting it, I'm picking it up. I'm there. It's such a clever adaptation, and it's so well shot and it has so much faith in the audience to understand and to follow, that it really helps it just carry on going at the pace it needs to. So you could carve a pumpkin, you could get some sleep, you could read Comedy of Errors, exercise, exfoliate, organise a bookshelf, have a good soak. But there are still some more things you can do with your extra hour. I mean, it's too late now.
Could you bake a loaf of bread in an hour?
Well, number 8 is bake an unusual cake.
An unusual cake? So not your typical Victoria sponge.
Why not try something experimental? How about courgette and orange?
That sounds horrible.
Oh, Dan's face there. That was like, literally, I just saw child Dan there.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
No, thanks.
Okay. Well, actually, I've had my guess. You'll go, Daniel.
I can't think of anything, so I'm looking around the room.
Good. Have you got any albums in there, Dan?
No, but you're walking me down a path, and I want it to be my own idea, so I'm going to say no to that answer, because I can guess where you're going with that. I'm going to say do something boring but productive, like sort out your finances or something along those lines, like something that you don't want to have
Rob
to
a
do,
bank.
but you get an extra time to utilise it.
Well, something you don't
I looked around
want
and
to
saw
do.
a calculator, so...
Well, kind of. There's learn a times table. Dedicate an hour to learning one of the trickier times tables and give the grey cells a good workout. So there you go.
So work with numbers.
What about listening to an album you haven't listened to in a while? Just plucking that out of thin air.
Yeah, but Kris, maybe there's a specific album that lasts 58 minutes and 19 seconds.
I don't know of any albums that last exactly 58 minutes. They kind of all do, don't they, to some degree? A lot of them do.
Depends. Well, just to let you know that Queen's Greatest Hits has a running time of 58 minutes and 19 seconds. So there you go. You could listen to that with your extra hour.
Yeah, and have 1 minute and 41 seconds to reflect on it verbally with somebody else.
Oh, God, yeah. There is something else you could do with an album of sorts, but it's not a listening album.
Make a photo album.
You could make, Daniel, number 13. When was the last time you printed hard copies of your digital photos? Order them online and make a photo album.
I mean, you have to. You've got prep work there. It's not all been done because you've had to days earlier plan and do everything.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
there, I think, on that
Absolutely. There is some prep to do there, but I think we've really there's a couple of things. I think there's only 3 things left of this list. So yeah, we'll finish off the show with the final. Just keep thinking. You're doing really well. You're doing really well with this extra.
Thanks,
hour.
Dad.
Thanks, Sam.
Definitely. I'm very impressed. Very impressed. So, we saw Dune.
We did.
But before Dune,
Yeah, you had a two-hander. What did you hold in the right hand of that?
we saw a film which is even longer than Dune.
Yeah,
Dan.
nearly 3 hours long.
Yowza.
It's longer than Dune. It's scored by Hans Zimmer.
Well, I haven't been to the cinema in about... Actually, the last film I saw at the cinema was Endgame, so I'm fairly sure I haven't seen this one either.
Wow. Blimey, Charlie. This, I think, was delayed more times than Dune, I want to say. I don't know.
Yeah, it's had about 8 or 9 trailers.
Yeah. But yeah, we saw, Dan, the 25th Bond film in the James Bond franchise. We saw No Time to Die.
No Time to Die.
Daniel Craig swan song.
The Daniel Craig Swan song.
Part 1.
Where, but what? Imagine if it just. Did he just. Hang on. Did Carrie Fukunaga just. What? Carrie. No, yeah. No Time to Die. I mean. I'm not going to say as much about this as I did Dune, because all I need to say really, it's too long. It's pretty good. And
don't read the book beforehand.
Pierce Brosnan still remains my favourite Bond.
Really?
Yeah. I just got a soft spot. Like, that was when I was a teenager.
I was sold on Daniel Craig, like on Casino Royale. That was it. I was in on that.
Casino Royale is my favourite Bond film, but Pierce Brosnan is my favourite Bond.
I suppose it comes from what you look for in a Bond.
Dalton.
Yeah.
Timothy Dalton.
If you want it to be a bit funny, a bit silly, a bit kind of old James, then I think Pierce Brosnan is possibly the way to go.
Oh, hang on, Dan. I think Roger Moore ticks the boxes for those qualities.
Oh,
yeah, no, but
Pierce Brosnan, several who tick those boxes.
Yeah, but what Pierce Brosnan had, which Moore didn't, is that Pierce Brosnan did have a bit of a killer edge. Like, he felt like the reason why I love Pierce Brosnan so much is that he does straddle the fine line between super soldier killer and cheap late 90s stand-up comedian. And
it's a tightrope.
Like, I really appreciate moments like, I think it's in World Is Not Enough, where there's this massive dramatic opening sequence, and just before falling off a cliff, he grabs onto this big brass bell, and his final words are, "Saved by the Bell." And then there's a big opening credits, and I just I have big respect for that. I really respect the screenwriters to going, this is an incredible action scene, but how do we undermine it in just one line?
We'll put that in as a placemaker. We won't go with that one. We'll replace it with something better
isn't that the bit where he then follows that by kind of surfing down an avalanche, as if that's not undermining it enough?
No, I mean...
the Brosnan films like, Tomorrow Never Dies is probably the one I remember, like, almost wearing the VHS out of that.
So good. And I remember the PlayStation video game as well, where there was a cheat you could do to make Bond 20 feet tall. And he's just striding across all the levels. It's
like
amazing.
that was really good. Like, I really enjoyed Jonathan Pryce in that film.
He's so good. It's Elliot Carver. I mean, Timothy Dalton was always my Bond, just because he just looks like he could just explode at any point. So intense.
The strange thing is, though, is that No Time to Die actually references quite a lot, actually, the Bond, which has since become quite a lot of people's favourites, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, George Lazenby.
A lot of the music appears in it.
And I don't really understood where that reference came from, other than the fact that I think the reason why people really like that film, and it's gotten a lot more love over the recent years, is that it's sometimes referred to as the film that really gave Bond depth and some sort of sense of emotion, that he wasn't just a British super secret spy, but that he also, like, felt things and loved people. And so what's really interesting in No Time to Die, and generally over all of Daniel Craig's, like, arc, which essentially is what it is now classed as, from Casino Royale through to No Time to Die, is a connective arc for this Bond. And I think what No Time to Die actually really does achieve, even though it takes a bloody long time doing it, is that this is, for me, the first time that there has been a Bond who you feel has depth and actually has a character.
Yeah.
And actually there are stakes, and they do experience loss, and killing doesn't come easy. And credit to David Craig.
You mean Craig David? The name's David. Craig David.
Credit to Daniel Craig for actually having the acting chops to pull it off. And he's, in interviews that I've heard with him, he's he's acknowledged in the past how he's really fought to rein Bond in from the success of Casino Royale up until now. And you can really see it on the screen that he's got a handle of who Bond is and the conflict within this character. And I think that was my overriding impression of No Time to Die, that it felt like a movie with actual heart, which is not something you always come out of a Bond film saying.
No, because I was really wary about seeing this, because to be honest, Bond was really cool when I was younger as a kid, because it's spy, it's action, you've got gadgets and all these incredible stunts, and I didn't really crave that emotional depth. As I've got older, you realise those some of those earlier films in particular are extremely problematic, and you realise, particularly in the novels, Bond is really a massive prat. He just is. He's not a very nice person whatsoever, and it's really tricky going back and looking at those films, because it's very difficult to root for somebody who is just an arse. And that's always going to be the perennial difficulty, I think, for anyone playing this role, because really it's a character that is extremely dated. And what I like about No Time to Die is it really leans into that idea. Is this actually the time in which is there a world for Bond, really, essentially, this type of person? And this is something the character kind of comes to terms with. And I was pleasantly surprised by this film. Yes, it's long, but there are some incredible set pieces here, as you would expect from a Bond film. But it kind of goes in directions that I think are quite surprising and really interesting. I think there's always still that perennial difficulty where the more you bring Bond out of his shell and give him texture and character, the more the main villain pushes into the background. And as great as Rami Malek is, not a lot to do really, not given much to work with really. It's Craig's film, and the fact that there's a big bad is kind of incidental really. This is more about him coming to terms with other things going on in his life, really. And it, as you say, Sam, it is really the perfect denouement for this arc that has taken us from, Quantum through to Spectre to now, really. And it's one of those few films where certain characters, certain Bond girls in particular, in this case, Dr. Madeline Swan, who was in the previous film, appears in this film. And I could be wrong, but I think the only time that ever happened was probably from Dr. No to From Russia With Love, where a Bond girl appears fleetingly in both of those films, really. I can't think of any other incident, really. And it's no stranger that you get those echoes to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, because, Bond is developing, Bond has emotions. He knows what it is to love. And this is a character he's not keen to just kind of leave by the wayside and cast aside, as he has done so with many women, really. And that's quite refreshing, really. It's plodding at places, but it's I think a fitting end, I think, to this saga.
Well, I think the whole thing with looking back to kind of Her Majesty's Secret Service, I think that has been a touchstone for all of the Daniel Craig 18s. If you look at it, the character has played with kind of love and loss. You look at Casino Royale. I mean, Quantum of Solace, less said about that the better, but very much so when you look at Skyfall and Spectre, it deals with those things, deals with those ideas. And I think what's really interesting, and I do think, I mean, as much as you love Pierce Brosnan, Sam, his tenure as Bond took us to a point where it was a case of something massive needs to change because this character has gone stale. Either you do a complete reboot like they did, or you do something crazy like, all right, then we're going to have a guest director each time who are going to throw their whole new vision on it. So you're going to have a Tarantino Bond, you're going to have this, all these different stuff. They went with the reboot idea, which, I mean, as I say, Casino Royale, I think is almost the perfect action film. Almost. I'm not a big fan of the ending. But what's really interesting with what they've done with it is, more so than before, they've given this 5 films this arc, this constantly revisiting these ideas, development throughout, and storylines continue between films. It continues directly from Casino Royale to Quantum of Solace. It then picks up again, not so much because Quantum of Solace kind of got forgotten about for probably good. It's referenced a couple of times, like Spectre goes back to it a bit, Skyfall touches back on it a bit just to kind of incorporate it. But it is really interesting that they've been able to do that, and it's going to be fascinating to see how they take the next step onwards. Now, when Daniel Craig leaves the role, whether or not they have a reboot again completely, do they kind of drop everything that's already in place? Do they just do what they've done before and kind of keep some of the characters? So obviously someone like Judi Dench continued from the Pierce Brosnan series into Daniel Craig, even though narratively they make no sense whatsoever. Do they do that again, or do they just start afresh? And I think that's going to be something fascinating to see. I think more so than just who's going to be Bond, because I think everybody who you hear mentioned would be interesting. There are some that I think, for me, are more interesting than others. But I think any of them would be good. It's just how are they going to actually treat the series? Because they can't go back to the Pierce Brosnan days. The kind of that ship, I think, has sailed for the better, in my view. But they have allowed themselves now to do much more interesting stuff with the idea of what James Bond is.
I think what they should do for the new Bond film is
bring back Pierce Brosnan.
No, but they should get Danny Boyle to direct it, because I think that he left No Time to Die because he was wanting to do stuff that they didn't want to, that was not for Daniel Craig in that time. I think they needed someone like Carrie to like tell the story that the Broccolis wanted to tell. But I could definitely see a Danny Boyle-esque action movie kicking off a new era of Bond, like a really kinetic and fast and punchy, totally different to whatever we ever seen before style film, to bring in like a much younger Bond. And I wonder whether it is going to feel more like a prequel series, because at the moment there's such a great cast. Like Ben Whishaw is so good as Q, and
Naomi Harris,
Ralph Fiennes is good. Like there's such a a Money Penny. Like it's such a good cast of like well established characters. It all feels like it exists in the same world as Craig, and even more so when Judi Dench made the jump from Brosnan to Craig was okay, but it was kind of, that was just one character. Everyone else went by the wayside. Like there was a new Q, there was a new Money.
So yeah, but the Judi Dench character also felt so right within that dynamic as well. That it fitted perfectly for what they were doing with the character, that her performance would still be there.
Absolutely. But now it feels like they've done such a good job of creating those characters, but it's in Craig's world, that I think that unfortunately they will have to recast. I can't, I don't know. I think it's going to be such a different tone as well, that those characters just won't seem right in a different film.
I find it quite interesting as well that a lot the screenwriters Neil Purvis and Robert Wade, they've been there since I think GoldenEye or Tomorrow Never Dies. It's the same screenwriters for a long period. So I think, I'm not saying they've done a bad job, but what I'm saying is that I think for Bond to really be, to refresh, I think it just needs to refresh in all areas, really, across the board.
Well, that was the thing that Danny Boyle brought on the screenwriter for Trainspotting as well. So I think that was the other thing that maybe the producers didn't like about his vision, but maybe it does need a new writer like Danny Boyle was suggesting. Here we go. Put my money where my mouth is, that Danny Boyle will direct the next.
And who will
James
be Bond?
Movie. Who will be Bond? Christ.
Yeah.
It's not going to be Idris Elba, unfortunately, because that should have happened several years ago. And I don't think they'll cast another 50-plus actor to play Bond, because then they're just going to run into this problem.
Depends how long they want to... I mean, he would be my choice, just because I think he's absolutely fantastic and he ticks every single box. But as you say, you have to factor in then that you are casting an older Bond. I think that's more interesting.
But it's not just an older Bond. It's also, I think they've told the story that they wanted to tell about an old Bond with Daniel Craig, in terms of like...
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. It is that's a problematic, because you're continuing a similar journey, but there are different stories you could tell with that.
Yeah.
What about Roger Jean Page from Bridgerton?
No,
I'm not. I'm not feeling that.
I don't like him.
That's fine. You can
What
play
I
Bond
love
then.
about this period is you got the Bridgestone guy who's like appearing in suave adverts, looking really cool and like getting out of fancy cars and whatever. Then you've got like Henry Golding who's appearing in Snake Eyes, like trying to do like all like basically is like a little casting call. And like I just think sometimes there is deliberate attempt by agents to get like right Henry, do Snake Eyes, G.I. Joe Origins, because it'll be great. It'll be great to get you as the next Bond.
I mean, it's difficult because like you kind of feel as though Bond should be a big actor. There's something about that role, but I mean, like
No, not
at the time,
necessarily.
Daniel Craig wasn't like the megastar that he's now. He was a big actor.
Tom Hardy?
No,
I think Tom Hardy would be great. He's an obvious choice. I think.
I know.
I mean, he played Bond in Inception for me. That's I think, and I loved his character in Inception.
Actually, talking Nolan, it should definitely be.
A Christopher Nolan Bond.
I think Christopher Nolan should direct a Bond movie.
Well, he's always wanted
basically
to.
do Tenet.
He's always wanted to, hasn't he?
And John David Washington would be incredible.
He's fantastic.
But
he might be
He's
American.
the one thing I enjoyed in that film.
yeah, but I mean, like, I think for a new Bond, it's got to be something that isn't just a carbon copy of everyone before, because there are different ways of playing suave. There's, and he's also got to be to some degree a bit of a prat, because Bond is a bit of a prat, and it's, well, to what degree?
Chris, can I just say, when you say Pratt, for me, that immediately makes him sound like he's really clumsy. And like
Yeah, to be fair, same for me. That's what I take. I take.
Like, yeah, I know that you mean like socially, he's a bit like out of touch with how he should treat women, for example.
Yeah, kind of misogynist.
Yeah, but when you say Pratt, yeah, he's definitely like, whoops, tied my shoelaces together.
Yeah, well, I mean,
golly.
I wouldn't want any of that misogynism there at all. But what I mean is, like, in the sense that, like, he doesn't know he doesn't have a normal life. What he does is not normalizing whatsoever.
What a Pratt.
Like, he's very brisk, he's very kind of curt, very to the point. And I'm always interested, particularly in the Craig films, is just how incredibly lonely that is as a pursuit. It's not something that should be, oh yeah, wow, cool, what a jet-setting lifestyle you have. That actually, there's real pathos there in terms of that role. And what does it say about him as a person that this is their chosen profession, really?
Okay, so just like Bond, you've got to use your incredible sleuthing skills to work out what the 3 last things that you can do, according to Radio 4, with the extra hour that you get when Britain goes from GMT to BST. I think in America they change hours as well, don't they? But different.
Well, it's
different
complicated
time.
there because it depends on what side of America you're on, doesn't it, as well?
Right.
Is one of them spend an hour writing this list?
There is some writing involved.
Yeah, so writing a list of goals, perhaps, for the year. I know that's usually a New Year's Eve thing.
Send some thank yous.
Oh, keep an eye on your mailbox.
Again, appealing maybe to its audience here, grab yourself a nice pack of notelets. Notelets. You know that, Dan, that pack of notelets you've got, that headed paper that you've got that monogrammed paper already, don't you, Dan? So it's just easy to say.
Oh yeah, obviously.
Thank you, Kris, for being you. All right, it says two left.
I'm going to go with gardening.
Interesting. It's not on there. There is something that's kind of that some people call mental gardening.
Meditating.
Yes, well done, Dan. Be mindful for an hour.
I thought mental gardening was like pouring water into your ears. Trimming your nose hair.
Shoving some soil up your nose. Right, Kris, can you get the last one? The last thing that you should do with your extra hour this weekend. It's already passed if you're listening to this.
Well,
If I can give you a clue, think about when the time shift happens and how you may use that time to make the following morning better.
modify your the timer for your central heating. So when you wake up the next day, make that time better.
So the time changes around midnight. So what would you do around midnight to make the morning better?
Yeah. So, Kris, think about your morning in particular. What's first thing on your mind?
Breakfast.
Here we
So
go.
I would make something like overnight oats, or like put something in a slow cooker maybe. So when I wake up the next day,
Yeah, so
Food's
the option
there.
here is cook a breakfast bonanza.
oh yeah.
Um,
Is there
which
any other
finishes
kind?
stock up on ingredients the day before and then knock yourself up a breakfast of champions. And this sounds slightly threatening. Heston, eat your heart out.
He would do that, wouldn't he?
I know it's been a bit of a movie bonanza, but I don't think that should skew focus away from the wonderful thing that is enjoying someone else's company whilst playing a board game. I've only got something really, really sort of light to share because I've really not been playing that much of late, which is one of the reasons I'm looking forward to actually Halloween so much, and maybe that's what I should use my extra hour for. Because at Halloween it is a tradition that we have a spooky games night. Don't know how many years we've been doing it for now.
I'd say 3 or 4 years maybe.
3 or 4 years. Spooky games night, Mysterium.
Hang on, when was No Time to Die announced first? Yeah, about 3 or 4 years, I'd say.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years to get like Mysterium, Whitehall, or it's Whitechapel. I can never remember the title.
Betrayal from the House on Haunted Hill.
Betrayal at House on Hill. We always spend so I'm really looking forward to that because it's like, you know, a really nice chance just to get down and get a game to the table, which I have not done in feels like months, but I think it might only be weeks. But one of the last games I did actually get to the table and it was actually with you, Kris.
It was indeed.
And it was Little Factory, which I've done an unboxing for on our Instagram TV channel, which you can see for yourself what it looks like. And yeah, it's a really nice sort of, it's just a really nice game. I was really glad that having some time spare is really rare at the moment, so I was really glad I kind of picked this off the shelf to play, because it's one of those games that was relatively simple to learn, and but just had a lovely amount of crunch to it, and actually lasted a lot longer than I thought it was. Like, you look at the game and you look at the components, which is essentially just a deck of cards, and think, right, we'll just whack this out in 20 minutes. But we must have been playing for a good 30, 40 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
Essentially, if you played something like Oh My Goods before,
Yes,
I
definitely.
don't know if you played that game, Dan. There's a lot of sort of connective tissue between the two games. Essentially, what you're doing is trying to build a little community of buildings, which allows you to. Oh, I know. It's like Everdale.
I was about to say.
It's a bit like Everdale, but as a board game. So you basically have these cards set out in front of you, and they're set up in these rows, and you have these like level 1 cards, level 2 cards, level 3 cards, and then these buildings. And the level 1 cards are like the things in Everdale. They're like your clay, your wood, your cotton, some basic sort of utensils that you use. And then you use those items to then, for example, if you've got a couple of cards which both have wood on them, you can then trade those in to make a barrel, and then you can sell that barrel to make some money, and then use that money to make to buy a level 3 card, something that's further up the chain, and then you could sell that to then buy a building. Or you could, get a cow, and it's got this wonderful little mechanic where you can get a cow, and then you can just show your opponent that you've got a cow, and then you can just take the milk from the centre of the table, which I really liked. Or you could kill the cow, discard the card, and get meat. And the game revolves around, a bit like Everdale, which we spoke about on a previous podcast. The game revolves around essentially looking at these resources that you have and turning them into bigger and better things, in terms which will then in turn allow you to buy bigger and better things and build buildings which get you victory points, and it's the first person to get 10 of these victory points wins the game. And there is such I think Oh My Goods is great at doing this kind of thing, but it's a bit more imposing in terms of the cards are doing a lot more of the legwork in terms of their iconography, Would you agree, Kris?
Yes,
That-
it's one of its charms, really. There's so much game in a single deck of cards, and it's because each of the cards has multiple functions depending on how they're arranged on the table, really. So that can feel quite busy, whereas actually looking at the cards in this particular game, it's very clean, bright, bold colours. There's almost a kind of a sushi go aesthetic to it, really, that is very bright and colourful, very much like Everdale, which we've just spoke about. And that alone just makes it so clear that I can kind of track the little mini tech trees there that I need to follow, really, to afford what I need to afford, to upgrade to what I need to upgrade. And there's always something for you to do. There's never a moment where you can't do something, which is also really good. Because, in instances in Oh My Goods, just because of the luck of the draw, when you open the market, you may not be able to do anything that go, whereas in this game, you can always do something.
Yeah. And I think that iconography sells it. I think you said when we played it, and also when I played it with my wife, if the art on the cards wasn't as good as it is, it wouldn't be as an enjoyable game, which I know sounds bonkers, but because you're just spending all your time with this artwork, then it needs to be good, and it needs to kind of sell the idea that you're building this town and you are part of this iconography. And again, that's what Everdale does really well, is that there is not that much to the game, but the world itself looks good and looks engaging, that you do want to log in every day, because it is like a fun, nice, gentle world to inhabit. And Little Factory does the same. It definitely feels like a game where I am introducing something to someone, or maybe if I'm playing with someone who's slightly younger, like a young family or whatever, then this is definitely a game that I'd be bringing to the table, because the artwork is that engaging and that imaginative, and the mechanics are easy to explain, but also quite easy to understand logically. Of course, 2 bits of wood would turn into a barrel, and of course a cow would produce milk, or you can kill it and make beef or whatever. So it has a really lovely way of being able to introduce itself to lots of different people. I feel like if board games is your main big sort of hobby, I don't know if this is for you, but if you're the kind of family or person who is pretty happy with their copy of Sushi Go and that's it, then Little Factory is you can get it for about 15 quid, I think, and it comes in this relatively small box, and I think it definitely has a lot there for that kind of board gamer to enjoy.
And a perfect thing to do with an hour to spare.
An hour, you could play it maybe twice.
Yep.
No, you could set it up, explain the rules, and play it within an hour.
With the Best of Queen on in the background.
Yes. As long as you write a notelet saying thank you, Staying In, for introducing this game to us.
And do all of this whilst in the bath.
Yep.
Yes, sorry.
And there'll be space on your table for your breakfast bonanza.
That was Staying In with me, Daniel Frost, Sam Turner, and of course, Kris Darby. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope we were able to give you lots of ideas of what to do with your extra hour, including this episode. This episode will be exactly bang on 1 hour, so that can be your 15th thing to do every time this year rolls around. If you want to get in touch with us, you can do. We have lots of places you can do that, so you can always head over to our website, www.stayinginpodcast.com. You can leave us messages there or drop us an email on stayinginpod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions that you'd like us to answer, any questions just for us, that'd be fantastic. Any recommendations, we always love to hear what you're playing as well, so please do send those in. We'd love to hear what you're playing so we can play as well, and we can have a look and maybe talk about it on the show going forward. If you're down with that social media life, as the kids apparently don't say, you can contact us on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. If you go to Instagram, I'm reassured, I'm promised by Kris that he will try the Jacob's Crackers 3 in a minute, I think we decided it was. So he's promised he will try that, so that I do think will be worth the entrance fee alone. You can contact us on Facebook, Twitter. We're on YouTube. You can watch all episodes on YouTube. We have curated lists on Spotify, would you believe it? As well as Steam and Board Game Geek. If you'd like to get involved in any other way, just get in touch with us and we'd love to hear from you. So from me, from now, I'd love to say goodbye. Actually, I've got 10 more seconds. In order to make this an hour-long episode, I've got 10 more seconds. So thank you for listening. I'm just waffling a little bit now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Goodbye. Thanks.